Hey guys, how's it going? Sir Da Vinci here with another weekly vendor reset video for the Division. I know it's been a while. I kind of messed up with the last couple weeks and I just completely apologize for it. I don't want to make any excuses, so I'm just going to move on from it. A special video today because with it being my welcome back to the series, excuse me. Today is actually my birthday. It's pretty awesome. Luckily, it's right around Memorial Day, so usually I get around with the family and stuff like that and have a nice party. All my friends and all that kind of stuff. And also, a few days ago, on the, I believe, 23rd, 1.6.1 actually released. I was actually unaware of this. I thought that the release date was still unavailable. I was away from the game for a while, so that's kind of why I'm a little in the dark about a few things. But with 1.6.1 came loadouts, which is fantastic. You can see it here, which you've probably seen in other people's videos too. Right now I only have two builds set up, which are pretty much the same builds, just a couple weapons swapped around. One is my striker build, my primarily stuff for like PvP and stuff like that, and my solo build involving the AK and the M700 sniper for increased damage output. And with loadouts also came the increase of backpack space, which has now been doubled up to 120, I believe is the max, because all backpacks basically have the same backpack capacity. So as you can see, the one I have equipped has a 110, this one has 110, this one has 110. So all backpacks after level 30 with a gear score basically have the same increased capacity. The only thing that now changes it is depending on your upgrades in the base operations. So the perks that increase your backpack space, those are the only changes you can make to them after reaching level 30. So yeah, I just got my supply crate like literally 2 minutes before the reset, and so that way hopefully another one will pop up. I don't know if it will or not, but either way, let's hop right into the vendor reset. Alright, so starting off as usual here in the base operations hub where all the DLCs start at the special equipment vendor here for Phoenix credits. We're going to start off looking at the exotic weapons. First off here we have the Historian. This one's got 152% headshot damage, a little on the lower side. It comes with brutal, destructive, and history repeat. So this is actually a pretty darn good roll talent-wise. The headshot damage, like I said, is a little low. But either way, it's got brutal on it, which is great, which helps out with the lower headshot damage, and you kind of want brutal on your snipers anyway. Destructive is good for PvE, which is primarily the main focus of this weapon. I mean, it can be pretty good in PvP. I've been destroyed by it multiple times. But destructive, I think, on a sniper basis, you could probably do better with something like Prepared for the increased damage at longer range. But at the same time, I guess with it being a semi-automatic sniper, you could probably dish out some nice headshots up close too. So destructive isn't bad. There are some others that you could probably roll in there instead. But either way, pretty good. Next up we got the Cassidy, which comes with Predatory and Brutal. We got the Pecan with Deadly Commanding. The Liberator this week's got Destructive, Brutal, and Deadly. Okay, this is like literally one of the most perfect rolls. Having Brutal and Deadly isn't necessarily the greatest combination. But for PvE, like, so this is, I believe, a lightweight M4 variant that the Liberator takes after. It's got 23% enemy armor damage, 19,200 base damage, which is a little lower than obviously you can see on my personal lightweight M4. But Destructive is great for PvE, and it also does help in PvP a little bit. Brutal is great for assault rifles if you're primarily focusing on headshot damage over critical hit damage. And then Deadly, another thing I learned that I did not know about that made a change actually a decent time ago was the multiplier on headshot damage is reduced, so it isn't as effective. So running critical hit damage ended up being a viable way of using assault rifles as well as headshot damage. So it's up to you to choose. If you want to use this as a PvE focused weapon, then I would keep Destructive and then roll away either Brutal or Deadly depending on which one you want to stack more. But otherwise, I would roll away Destructive and keep Brutal and Deadly and roll something like, if you have the electronics for it, Competent. Otherwise, I would roll away Deadly for Competent. Or you could do, what else is there? You could do Responsive, a couple other talents you could probably get instead. But either way, this is a very good Liberator this week. And lastly, we have the Centurion here, which has Cool Headed, which is a very good talent to have on pistols. Especially in PvE and PvP, it's going to be a bit harder to take advantage of. If you have the electronics to use Cool Headed, pull that thing out to get your skills refreshed quicker with your pistol, which is nice because I believe Cool Headed is only available on snipers and pistols. So that's not a bad one to get this week either. And with the fact that it's the paired weapon with Liberator, I mean, this week is quite good for exotic weapons, guys. So definitely check them out. Alright, so next up, I'm going to point this one out primarily because there's something I want to say about them. So here we have a Vector with 22.5% critical hit chance, 18.5 thousand base damage with around 7,000 firearms. It comes with Swift, Fierce, and Hurried, which aren't the greatest 3 talents. Swift definitely not very good, especially on SMGs. Fierce is a pretty decent talent on SMGs, except for the fact that it has a high electronic roll, so you kind of want to try and get it in the 3rd slot. And Hurried is also a very good talent for SMGs, but due to the fact that you don't really have any other talents on here that do damage, it's not the best to have in the 3rd slot. But one thing I want to point out is the fact that along with 1.6.1 extended magazine size, so the ones that give the major attribute of magazine size, which is usually between about 100,000 or 100% and 110%. Now it has been increased to, I believe you can get up to 123% increased magazine size. So for SMGs like the Vector that have a low magazine size and a higher rate of fire, and also the MP7 and the AUG, that's going to help them out a lot, because before you would get about a double and maybe a couple extra bullets. Now you're going to get double plus another 20%. So for this one specifically, you're going to get 50 plus 1/5 of 25. So you can get up to 55 bullets in a Vector now, which is pretty close to 60, which is around what the like 32 bullet mags used to be. So that's definitely very helpful. Know that that's going to help SMGs become a hell of a lot better than they already are. So definitely look into maybe using them in your builds nowadays, especially since you have loadouts, so you can try out different things. Alright, also in a special equipment vendor, we go down here to find an ACR here with 22% enemy armor damage, 19.9 thousand base damage, which is really good. ACRs to me are not necessarily the greatest of assault rifles. Their firearms are not I'm sorry, the base damage is about the same as the lightweight M4, the police M4, and the LVOA. So the fact that you're losing 90 RPM, it doesn't really give anything else in return. I guess it is a bit easier to control the stability on it, but otherwise the damage is just going to be lower. But this one here has Fierce, Destructive, and Unforgiving. Unforgiving is a great PvP talent. Destructive is not as good of a PvP talent, but still pretty good and useful. And Fierce, obviously, you could definitely roll that away for something like Brutal, Deadly, depending on whether you want to focus on headshot damage or critical hit damage. But I think you would probably want to roll Brutal or Responsive instead, just because of the fact that the ACR is more stable and you'll be able to hit headshots a lot more easy. Alright, and next up we're going to scroll through all of the gear set pieces here in the special equipment vendor for Phoenix credits. Right now over here at the special blueprints vendor for Phoenix credits, also still in the base operations hub. This week we have the Super 90, the classic RPK 74, electronics gloves, and the electronics vest. We also have the Tyrant Suppressor blueprint, performance gear mod blueprint, and electronics gear mod blueprint. Now one thing I want to point out, due to the fact that I'm not seeing a lot of weapon and armor blueprints right now, the thing to point out is the fact that if I have already purchased the blueprint, like I said in previous weeks, if you guys watch my videos, if I've already purchased the blueprint, it's not going to show up for me. So I personally always suggest to everybody to just check the blueprint vendor, even if you watch these videos, just because of the fact that it is possible for me to have missed something. I know last week I heard that the MP7 blueprint was available, but if I had made a video, I already have the MP7 blueprint, so it wouldn't have shown and I wouldn't have been able to tell you guys. So this is why I always give this warning whenever I get to the special blueprints vendor, to let you guys know that definitely still go to the vendor even if you watch these videos, just in case I already have the blueprint purchased. Okay, we are now moving upstairs in the base of operations to the advanced weaponry vendor here for base credits, and the first thing we come across here is a lightweight M4. Unfortunately, the talents on it are quite bad. All three of them not really complementing the weapon very much at all. Due to the fact that this weapon has a very high rate of fire, it's harder to control the stability on it, and meaning that prepared is almost pointless to have on it, because if you're more than 30 meters from the target, you really don't want to even be trying to shoot them with this thing. You want to be using a sniper or something like that. So I wouldn't even bother trying. So that's a pretty garbage talent as it is. Accurate, I mean, it's beneficial, no doubt about it, but it's definitely one of the more less beneficial talents that there are, because of the fact that assault rifles are already accurate as it is, and seeing as how most gunfights are taken up close, accurate isn't going to be helpful very much. Self-preserved is a good talent, but if you're looking to dish out more damage, definitely not the talent you want to get. Critical hits with this weapon heal you for 3% of the damage dealt, so pretty much all your crits are going to increase your health. So if you guys were to buy this, seeing as how it's base credits, not hard to get, it does have pretty high base damage, only 200 less than my current one. 18% enemy armor damage is a little low, but mine is also pretty low. But other than that, if you need or want a lightweight M4, you don't have one yet, you can definitely pick it up. Like I said, base credits, most of the time people shouldn't really be worried, or you shouldn't really be struggling to have base credits, so should be pretty easy to acquire. Alright, also here in the advanced weaponry vendor, we scroll down to find an extended mag here with 116.5% magazine size, 4.5% reload speed, and 3% critical hit chance. The preference on magazine size, or extended mag, sorry, is to have the magazine size, critical hit chance, and rate of fire. So having reload speed instead of the rate of fire is going to reduce your DPS that you could potentially get from your extended mag, but still not a bad extended mag that you can get here. It has a higher magazine size, up closer to the 120%, which is around the max, instead of the lower portions, which are around 110% or lower. So definitely a pretty good pickup for base credits if you need it. Also here in the advanced weaponry vendor, we have a loud vent break with 16% critical hit damage, 5.5% headshot damage, and 4.5% optimal range. This is actually a pretty darn good loud vent break muzzle for SMGs. As you can see, you can use it on pretty much any weapon. This one having increased critical hit damage is the major attribute. I believe you can get that up to about 19%, so this one isn't the greatest that you could get, but still definitely helpful if you need them to complement your SMGs, get them up to at least the stats that you want to have, because in Last Stand everything gets scaled up to max anyway, so it doesn't matter if it's 16 or 15 or 19, it's all going to get bumped up to whatever the max is anyway. So just having the right attributes on each piece of gear is what you really want to focus on if you plan on playing Last Stand. 5.5% headshot damage, always nice to have increased damage. I believe you can get critical hit chance here, so I think that would be better instead of the headshot damage or optimal range. But optimal range is also pretty helpful for SMGs because of the fact that they're made for more close quarters combat, and their range drop off for bullet damage is on the lower side, so having the optimal range is going to help them be more effective at a longer range. Alright, still here in the base of operations, we move over here to the Dark Zone gear vendor, which is in the defense quarter? Security wing, sorry. If you go in here, we have another extended magazine here, but this one is going to cost you Dark Zone funds, just as a heads up. This one here has got 114.5% magazine size, which is lower than the last, but we've got 4.5% reload speed again, but it also has 4.8% rate of fire. Now, like I said, I believe personally that the God Roll extended mag is magazine size, obviously, critical hit chance, and rate of fire. This one actually has the rate of fire, thankfully, and it is close to 5%, which I believe 5.6% is the max, so definitely not a bad extended mag to pick up. Alright, now at the front entrance of the base of operations here at the weapons vendor, we find another extended mag here with 113.5% magazine size, getting a little lower each time here, but at least this one is for base credits, and it also comes with 4.5% reload speed and 4.6% rate of fire. Alright, finally out of the base of operations here up here at the Wolves Den safe house, northwest corner of the map. We come into the weapons vendor here and find a PP19, which is quite decent this week. 21% critical hit chance, 18.1 thousand base damage for me at least. It comes with accurate, unforgiving, and hurried. Hurried is the guaranteed talent in the third slot for the PP19, just so you know. So you're always going to get that on PP19s in the third slot. Accurate is good for SMGs and shotguns. SMGs, not necessarily taking as much of a benefit from it due to the fact that you want to try and stack as much damage increase or other things that are going to help you out in combat more than just the accuracy of the weapon due to the fact you're already going to be up close anyway. Unforgiving is great for PvP, for any weapon really. Whenever you're trading shots with somebody else, just a 1v1 gunfight, having Unforgiving is going to put you over the top of the opponent, especially if they aren't using it themselves, due to the fact that when your health gets lower, you're going to be doing more damage, and you'll be able to outdamage them at that point. Hurried, like I said before, is good for SMGs due to the fact that you're going to be critting most of the time anyway. So having the increased reload speed, especially on SMGs with lower magazine size, which doesn't really complement the PP19 as much, but still the PP19 has a pretty low reload speed as it is, so not a bad thing to have there in the third slot. So personally, I would suggest rolling away accurate for something like responsive or deadly, and you could have yourself a decent PP19. Also in the same weapons vendor here at the Wolves Den safe house, here we have an Omega rifle suppressor with 17.5% headshot damage, 4% critical hit damage, and 2.5% stability. Personally, I would suggest getting critical hit chance instead of the stability, which would make the perfect roll, in my opinion at least, on assault rifle and sniper rifle primary focus muzzles. The headshot damage, I believe, could be up around 19%. The critical hit damage, I believe, is max out of about 4%. And also, if you get the critical hit chance, is around the same amount. Stability is nice, though, for semi-automatic snipers and high rate of fire assault rifles, so still not a bad thing to have in the third slot if you are in need of a suppressor. Alright, next up here at the Kerman Station safe house, we come in here at the weapons vendor and scroll down to find a very nice pro red dot sight, primarily focused on either shotguns or SMGs. This one has 17% critical hit damage, 3% critical hit chance, and 5.5% headshot damage. All three of the perfect skills or talents, or attributes, sorry, that you want to have on your dot sight for SMGs and shotguns. One thing you could do is have a scope that has accuracy for your shotguns. If you're running like a striker build with an SASG, having increased accuracy is going to help you keep your striker stacks up a lot more due to the fact that none of the shrapnel from the shot of the shotgun is going to, it's not going to have as much of a spread, so it's going to be tighter on your target. If you aim for the body, you're probably not going to miss with any of them, which, if you didn't know, shotguns, each little piece from each shot, due to the fact that it hits multiple times, counts as a shot. So missing any of those is going to reduce your striker stack. So having the tighter accuracy is nice, but at the same time, having that increased critical hit damage and headshot damage is going to also be very nice, especially on SMGs. This is the perfect scope for them. I believe the rolls on them, I believe you can get up to 19% critical hit damage and 4% critical hit chance, but other than that, it's very good dot sight to get. Next up here at Camp Hudson, the hub where you originally start the game. First up here at the weapons vendor, we scroll down to find another nice scope for shotguns or SMGs. Obviously, you can use these scopes on pretty much anything. As I scroll down the list on the right, you can see. But with the attributes that are on them, that's why I'm saying it's primarily focused on SMGs and shotguns, because the stats align very well with them. This one is an alternative to the one we just saw previously. This one has 18% critical hit damage, 2.5% critical hit chance, and 6% headshot damage. As far as the scopes go, this one actually has a 3.4 times zoom, so if you actually want to look down the sight of the scope and you prefer that, then I would suggest getting this one. The downside only being 0.5% less critical hit chance, but an increase of 1% critical hit damage and 0.5% increase in headshot damage. So this one's better in the damage output with the loss of a little bit of critical hit chance. So it's up to you which one you prefer. Really nothing else that should really affect which one you choose. Here we at the gear vendor now, we scroll down to find a very nice prototype performance mod here. For anyone who hasn't gotten them yet, prototype performance mod of first aid self heal 5.5%. I believe the max is 6%, so not too much of a loss if you get this one. You haven't gotten any yet. I personally have found a week in the past where we did have 6%. Actually, I think we had it 2 weeks in a row at different vendors. And for base credits, you can't go wrong. This is the perfect prototype performance mod for solo players, which I am. It's also helpful for anyone running like a tankier build in a group. It doesn't matter, whichever you want to use. But for me personally, so as a solo player, this is like a must-have as your prototype performance mod slots. Okay, next up here at the Meat Locker Safe House, we have a pretty good one here at the weapons vendor. We scroll down to find an LVOA. This one's got 23% enemy armor damage, 20.4 thousand base damage with my firearms. It's rolled with Destructive, Competent in the second slot, and Determined. Unfortunately, if Competent and Determined were switched, this could be a very, very good assault rifle. Unfortunately, the stats are very good on it, but the talents aren't the best. Determined, I guess, isn't all that bad of a skill. When you're talking damage output, though, it's not going to help you very much, and having Competent there in the second slot means you can't roll away Determined for it. Competent is one of the best talents to have right now, especially in the third slot if you do not have the electronics for it, although I'm going to be tampering my main build a little bit to reduce my stamina and increase my electronics and skill power and firearms, dish out some more damage, and be able to heal myself more. So I guess Determined, like I said, isn't the worst talent you could have. In the third slot, it works because I believe it does have an electronics requirement. Killing a target reduces skill cooldowns by 7.5%, so it's not bad in PvE, which is complemented decently by Destructive, which is a very good PvE talent. So I guess you could roll away Competent for something like Responsive, Deadly, or Brutal, which would then make this weapon at least pretty decent. Not the best. The base damage, fortunately, is very high, and also the enemy armor damage, I believe, is at max. So definitely a pretty decent pickup. I don't know whether or not I'm going to grab one myself. It wouldn't really hurt at 1.6, almost 1.7 million credits. But either way, definitely check this one out, guys. Alright, next up here in the southeast corner of the map at the Ward Safe House, here at the gear vendor, we scroll down to find a decent prototype performance mod here. I guess I shouldn't have said decent, seeing as how it's at the max percentage of turret health you can get. But here we have a 7% turret health prototype performance mod, which is great for anyone running like a Firearms build or something like that. Turrets are a great distraction. Having them available to you for an extended amount of time is very crucial to their effectiveness. For example, as I've said this story in so many other videos previously, but I will say it again in case there's some newcomers here. Having a turret as a distraction is great. If you stack yourself with a Firecrest build, that's good to so your turrets, so say you're using a fire turret, its damage is enough to make someone not want to take damage from it, and it's lighting you on fire is actually affecting your opponent. That means they're going to want to get rid of it, right? They do not want it around. It is pissing them off. Trust me, I have been on the opposing side of a fire turret many times, especially someone running for prototype performance mods with 7% turret health. And having the increased health means that your opponent is going to be focusing on your turret longer in order to kill it. So say your opponent really doesn't want it there and they try to shoot it, the more health it has, the longer it's going to take, meaning that their focus is then on their turret and not you, so that you could pump shots into them, maybe run away if you need to. Whatever it comes to, your turret can save your life many times, and it is a very helpful thing, especially when it has increased health. You could obviously roll increased damage, but I believe those only roll at about 3%, and that would mean you get about 12% increased damage over 28% turret health. So in my personal opinion, for any Firecrest builds, this is what I suggest you use in the prototype performance mod slots. Alright, so moving on now to the Grindhouse Safe House. Here at the weapons vendor, we scroll down to find another decent vector. This one here has got 19.5% critical hit chance, 17.7 thousand base damage, on the lower end side of base damage, but either way, we scroll down here to the talents to find it has Unforgiving, Capable, and Adept. Unforgiving, like I said, is a great PvP talent. Unfortunately, if you're running a build that's stacked more in firearms and electronics and not so much in stamina, you're not really going to be able to take advantage of Unforgiving, which, like I said, is a very good talent. Um, but I believe the increase in firearms that you get while sacrificing stamina might also be worth it due to the fact you're going to be killing people quicker anyway, so Unforgiving isn't necessarily going to be all that necessary. Capable is the talent I would suggest rolling away for something like Responsive or Deadly. I believe those are like the two top talents for SMGs right now. And then Adept in the third slot is perfect if you do not have the electronics to get it on any of the other slots, which increases your critical hit chance by 7.5% for 15 seconds after you use the skills. Pop a booster shot or your pulse, and bam, start firing away. Alright, next up here at the Firewall Safe House, I'm pointing this one out primarily due to the fact that there's a build I want to actually focus on. Here we have a actually quite nice prototype firearms mod here with 264 firearms, which is very high, and it has 2.5% exotic damage resilience. Now, usually I would really only focus on mods that would have either health or skill power or something like that in the major attribute slot, due to the fact that I personally found them to be more worth it than something like exotic damage resilience, due to the fact that it's only 2.5%. Now, with the most recent update of 1.6.1, the cluster bomb, the fire cluster bomb seeker mine mod was nerfed due to the fact that it was one-shotting people. You could make a pretty easy build to be able to one-shot people with it. It was just doing a bit too much damage, at least in some people's opinions. I was kind of on both sides of the argument, but either way, the reason I want to point this out, like I said, is primarily because of that, and obviously other explosions and stuff like that, like the short bow knee pads. Your grenades are pretty much blow up instantly. People don't have time to avoid them at all. So having EDR is very, very helpful, especially in PvP right now. So having this extra 2.5% on, say you run 5 of these to increase your firearms a bit, having that EDR, well, then you'll get up to about 12.5% EDR on top of whatever bonuses you have on other pieces of gear. So that alone is going to help out quite a bit with reducing the amount of damage that you take from skills or fire or grenades and stuff like that. So definitely a very useful mod to get, and I'm actually probably going to pick up a few of these myself due to the fact I want to try and make a build with increased firearms and not focus as much on toughness, and maybe even get my skill power up a bit. So definitely gonna grab some of these, and I suggest you guys do too. Alright, now checking out the Dark Zone vendor check. Alright, now checking out the Dark Zone checkpoints here. First off, at the West 34th Street Dark Zone checkpoint. At the Dark Zone vendor here, we scroll nowhere to find a first wave vector here with 21% critical hit chance, 17.2 thousand base damage, at least with my firearms. It comes with brutal, destructive, and talented. Talented, just get rid of it. Keep destructive and brutal. They aren't the best talents for SMGs, especially if you're looking to make an SMG for PvP. But talented being the worst of the three, and especially since it's in the third slot, you have a bigger variety of things you can use. You don't have the firearms or stamina or electronics to use a certain talent, then you can roll it in the third slot, and it is pretty much free. So what I would suggest personally is either responsive, deadly, or competent there in the third slot. Competent for people who don't have really the electronics requirement. Responsive and deadly, though, being, like I said, the top 2 talents in my personal opinion, and probably most others for SMGs being one of the best talents. Also here in the West 34th Street Dark Zone checkpoint, we have a prototype stamina mod here with 256 stamina and 3001 skill power. This is nice for people looking to make a little more toughness and also be able to follow up with that with the fact that obviously the more health you have, the harder it is to heal yourself higher. So the higher your skill power, your first aid is going to be able to compensate and be able to heal all that extra health that you're getting from the increase of stamina. Alright, we are now at the West 42nd Street Dark Zone checkpoint, and we have another extended mag this week with 118% magazine size. I believe is the highest we've run into so far. 4.5% reload speed and 4% critical hit damage. Like I said, the better would be critical hit chance and rate of fire, but still, having that increased magazine size is the most important thing, alongside reload speed obviously being helpful, and also critical hit damage. Okay, next up here at the West 46th Street Dark Zone checkpoint, we have a decent MP7 here, which is rolled with 22.5% critical hit chance, which is quite high, 15.5 thousand base damage. Comes with Ferocious, Dominant, and Responsive. Responsive is great for SMGs. Most weapons that you're going to be using in PvP are going to take most of their effectiveness up close in quarters because of the fact that most gunfights happen up close. So Responsive is always good to have on pretty much any weapon for the most part, other than snipers. Dominant is not very good, and neither is Ferocious, especially if you're running a PvP build. But if you were going to roll away, if you were going to get this weapon in the first place at all anyway, and you were going to roll away one of the top two, if you have the electronics for one of them, obviously they both have the same electronics requirement. If you have the requirements for Ferocious, I would keep that and then make this a PvE focused weapon, and then get rid of Dominant for something like Deadly. Or you could get Brutal, I suppose, but I wouldn't necessarily suggest it. But to me, I think Deadly is probably the best one you're going to get there. Alright, next up here in the northeast corner of the Dark Zone at DZ09 at the East 64th Street Dark Zone checkpoint in the gear mod here, we have a prototype electronics mod with 243 electronics and 3,182 skill power. Complement each other perfectly if you're looking to run a skill build. This is probably the perfect mod you're going to get. Obviously, it could be higher in the electronics and skill power categories, but still, the combination of electronics with skill power is very good for any skill build. Next up here at the East 61st Street Dark Zone checkpoint at the Dark Zone weapon mod vendor, we have a very good VX1 scope 12 times zoom here with 18.5% headshot damage, 3% critical hit chance, and 4% critical hit damage. The max headshot damage you can get is about 19%, I believe, so that's already pretty much max. 3% critical hit chance is the max, and 4% critical hit damage is also the max. So this is a very good VX1 scope. Snipers, assault rifles, really anything you want to stack headshot damage on alongside having the extra critical hit chance and damage. This is almost as good as it gets. Alright, next up here at the East 58th Street Dark Zone checkpoint, as you may all know that the Nimble ability on holsters got nerfed. Now, the change that was made to it was beforehand, it used to heal you 2% of your max health for every 1 meter ran. And that was an instant thing. So you ran from cover to cover, and say you ran 10 meters. That means once you get to the cover that you're running to, you gain 20% of your health instantly back. Okay, and people thought it was OP. A lot of people thought it wasn't. Obviously, those are going to be the people who used it very often. But just know that the nerf did not ruin it. So that's why I'm showing it to you now, because this is actually a very good one. So first off, we look at the attributes on it. We got 1242 firearms, 1259 stamina, and 1199 electronics. Firearms and stamina, very good rolls. Electronics a little on the lower side, but due to the fact that the major attribute was already rolled at 19% reload speed, which I personally suggest getting that as the major attribute. You could get something like health or something else, but I personally suggest a reload speed because it helps with any weapon you're using, and it's a large chunk of reload speed that you're gaining. So Nimble now, after completing a cover-to-cover move, you heal 2% of your max health over 4 seconds for every 1 meter ran. So you still get, after 10 meters, that 20% health, but it's over the course of 4 seconds, so that means 5% of that every single second. So, with that being said, if you like the reload speed as a major attribute, go ahead and roll those electronics to something higher, and you get yourself a very, very good Nimble Holster. Alright, heading on into the Dark Zone now. First off here at the DZ08 safe room at the Dark Zone special vendor, we will scroll through all the gear set pieces now. Alright, we are now at the DZ09 safe room in the Dark Zone, at the Dark Zone special vendor, where we will scroll through the gear set pieces now. Alright, finally, last but not least, here at the DZ06 safe room, we will scroll through the gear set pieces now. Alright guys, that's it for another weekly vendor reset video for the Division. One thing I want to say before I end this is I appreciate anyone who watches this video, and especially the ones to leave a like, comment down below, anything like that, because of the fact that I had been doing the series for quite a while and I didn't even think I was going to start it. But for any of the people who were there, gave any feedback toward my videos, whether it was good or negative or anything that could help me out and make me a better YouTuber, I really appreciate you guys sticking around. And anyone who watches this video specifically and has stuck around with my videos since before I stopped doing them for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, and I really apologize for that. For anyone who used my videos and really appreciated the way I make them, because I know I give a lot more info on certain items and weapons and stuff like that than a lot of other people who do the series. It's nice to hear that that's actually something that's appreciated, because I put a lot of extra time into doing that. And just so everybody knows, there's no script to this. There's no thought about it. I kind of go to the vendor, look at the item, and then just right off the top of my head say the info that comes to mind about the weapon or piece of gear, then why it's helpful and what types of builds you can use it with. So I mean, that in itself I believe is somewhat skillful. Obviously, you can hear me stutter a lot of times when I'm doing things. I cough, whatever. I gotta clear my throat and stuff like that. That's stuff that currently, at least, I obviously have to work on. I can't really do a whole lot about, especially when I'm like in my bedroom, not like in a professional area with soundproof walls and stuff like that. I have other things that are in the surroundings creating sounds, and I don't have the greatest voice for this kind of stuff. But either way, I know I'm rambling on now, so I'm going to end it here. Once again, really appreciate it, guys. Hope you guys stick around for more. I really would like to do a lot more videos, especially now with the loadouts. I can do a lot more builds and stuff like that. Maybe I'll even go over the build that I currently use and why I use it and how good it is and stuff like that. And other builds that could potentially become good. So, thanks again for watching, guys, and I will see you guys next time.